The next station was yellow. The strange caustic yellow lighting and one huge vaulted ceiling running from the track wall to the opposite side made this station really unusual. But here it was left behind. The train picked up speed again, and outside the window was the same dark tunnel, flashing wires and slab joints. There were about 4 other people in the car besides me, all of them glued to their cell phones. For some reason, a strange excitement arises. I think something is wrong, but I don't know what. There are 2 more stops to the end of the line, and in 5 minutes we'll be there. But it's not a tunnel, it's not a half stop. It's as if something unpleasant is waiting for me there. Yes, a totally vague and indefinite premonition. The next station was also dark. The whole station was the same with stairs, but the lighting here was dim, as if a dim light had been burning outside the window of the train all the way down. Perhaps it would have been better to go downstairs. Let's go back home, where it's warm and cozy. Let's take the train home. No, once you've made a decision and achieved most of what you set out to do, you shouldn't give up. That's the end of the line. That train is no longer running. Please take it back. This station was cleaner than the last one, and there were many people waiting for the train to the center. I went to the first floor, exit 6, yes. The street greeted me with frost on my face and snow that looked like the little shiny things they glue on cheap Christmas decorations. It was getting dark. The stop must be nearby. Yes, I was looking for the 1313K bus, and it was right in front of me. I stood with the door open. There was no time to think about it, so I made a decision and opened the door. I told the driver I was going to the end of the line, and inserted my card into the terminal he gave me. After a 5-minute stop, about 10 people got into the minibus. The doors finally closed, and the minibus drove away, somewhere down below in the blue winter twilight. Before we get to the climax, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Andrei. I'm 14 years old, and I live on the outskirts of Moscow. I'm no different than any other teenager my age. Where are you going? Why are you going? They ask. I asked myself these questions over and over again as I got carsick in a subway car. At first it went like this. I met a certain number of beautiful women on a dating site, and one thing led to another, and we started chatting for hours. Then, of course, I met her, walked around, found out her true nature, and continued our relationship. Fortunately, she told me she lived in Moscow. Knowing Moscow so well, I was willing to do anything for such a beautiful woman. So we made a deal. She sent me a letter and told me how to get there, and I specified that I would go with my best friend. I reluctantly agreed to those terms. Then we left town in a van with a strange license plate, 1313. But this was nothing new to me. I knew she lived in the suburbs bordering the countryside. As the suburbs opened up outside the window, we drove into an area of new buildings, and the van crossed a wide highway. The desolate winter woods began outside my window. It was then that I received a message on my cell phone from a girl. Where you are. Come quickly. The message was as follows. While I was answering the message, the brightness outside the window changed for a moment. As I looked out the window, I saw thick fog behind the cold glass and thick frost on the trees. Despite the late twilight, the landscape is somewhat milky. It's strange, if you think about it. Very strange. No sooner had I finished thinking about it than the silhouettes of dark skyscrapers and bright street lights appeared outside the window. There was a flower store on the other side. Beyond that was a field, and I couldn't see anything beyond that because of the fog. That was it. I had to go. The door opened noisily. In the background of distant houses and snow-covered hills, the silhouettes of 2 girls could be seen. They are neither the girls I'm in love with nor their friends, I explained. They're not bad girls, of course, but they don't stand out from the thousands and thousands of others like them living all over this big Moscow. It takes me about half an hour to walk there, maybe a little more. Most of the time we just walk back and forth between similar apartments and around the only school in the neighborhood, talking about different things. It turns out that each of the girls has only been to spacious Moscow a few times in their lives. Eventually, it all started to freeze. It was already raining pretty hard in the evening, and the fog was as thick as ever outside. So I suggested we go to the mall or a cafe, and it ended up being neither. The nearest mall was a half-hour walk through the woods, where, as one of the girls said, one could get lost. And that seemed to be true. As we walked, we realized that something was clearly wrong. We were told that it was just a power outage, the third since the neighborhood had been built. It was cold, dark, short, and dirty. She and I were a little disappointed that we couldn't talk one-on-one or get to know each other better. Then we walked to the bus stop. Because we were all cold and wanted to go home, we both walked ahead and my girlfriend walked behind. Eventually, I decided to ask her if she had a boyfriend. If not, if she was looking for one, and if she planned to date. The answer was no. But why is she sitting on a dating site if she's not looking for anyone? That was the question. When I got to the road, the bus had already stopped about 100 yards away. At that moment, the girl's friend said, "If you don't hurry up, the next bus may not come." At that moment, I had no idea what she meant, and my mind went blank when I realized that the person with whom I had had so many conversations and friendships was clearly refusing to communicate and develop since our meeting. I quickly said goodbye and hastily jumped on the bus. As I got off at the bus stop, I took one last look around and saw that most of the houses were unlit. The fog was thickening and visibility had dropped to 300 meters, 400 meters or even less. Up ahead and to the sides, the forest is still covered in frost and fog, and there are few oncoming cars. There is a strange emptiness in the air. No joy, no sadness, just complete emptiness. With a metallic clang, the key falls out of my pocket and rolls under the seat. I pick it up, sit down, and look out the window at the usual nighttime view of the forest. No frost, no fog, just bare trunks and branches. I saw more street lights, cars coming and going, an intersection in the distance, and another skyscraper behind it. It was then that it occurred to me that the landscape of this road would suddenly change. I thought it was a deviation from nature and climate. I wasn't surprised, since I could get off at a stop halfway, walk from there to the station, and return home without a transfer. But it turned out that it was a longer walk to the station than I had assumed from the map on my cell phone. Imagine a 14-year-old me walking alone on a freezing night in the middle of nowhere. Spooky, isn't it? And then I felt another emotion rise from the depths of my stomach that I probably don't understand. And the road, lit by dim street lights, went on and on. As I walked, I thought my feet would freeze. But finally there was a station, a dimly lit platform and trestle of it. There wasn't even a pavilion with a ticket booth at the station where we could get warm. It was freezing and getting colder and colder. There was not a single person on the platform. I felt abandoned and at one point wondered if there were trains here. However, I soon realized that there was one shiny sign at the end of the platform that said a train would be coming in 15 minutes. I entered the station and sat in an empty seat. There were several other passengers on board besides me. A mumbling voice came from the speakers, the doors closed, and the train began to move quietly, gradually gaining momentum. Only now a heavy cloud of fatigue hung over me. I scrolled through social media on my phone, trying not to think about anything until I got home. When I got home, I greeted my parents, ate a light dinner, and went to bed. I almost fell asleep, even though it was only 8 p.m. There were no cafes or malls, just a school, 3 or 4 grocery stores, and a pharmacy. Here too, everything was shrouded in a purple fog, with not a single light on the houses. I was in the living room of my grandmother's apartment, watching Euro dumplings on TV. Suddenly, the broadcast was interrupted, and a monotone voice said, "Attention. This is an urgent message." The other world was shrouded in fog. It was a residential complex of 25 high-rise buildings on the outskirts of Moscow. It could only be reached by a minibus, which invariably appeared at subway stations, but only those who had already made up their minds could go. It was unknown whether the people there were real or not. At this time, the fog stopped spreading in different spaces. I suddenly woke up. Sometimes I have these stupid dreams. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning on the clock. I got up, drank some water, and went back to bed. But I couldn't sleep. The night view made me paranoid. Suddenly in my sleep, the whole picture came together, like pieces of a puzzle I could never put together. Then the landscape outside the van window suddenly changed. A thick fog appeared as if it had come from somewhere else, and the lights of the houses went out. And I also remembered the words of one of the girls. "If you don't hurry, there might not be any more buses." Everything was really connected. 4 days later, since the day of the walk, the girl had not used the internet or read my messages. The 1313th bus was not found on the map or in that neighborhood. I tried again and again, but to no avail. What I remembered for sure was some cottage community, but the station is quite real, and hundreds of radial trains pass through it daily. So there it is,